Hello, everyone. Welcome to Michelle's Inspiration Hour. I'm thrilled to bring you an episode designed to infuse your life with newfound inspiration and joy. As Buckminster Fuller wisely said, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. So, our special guest, Zachary Parker Harris, embarked on a remarkable journey. Initially thriving at Fortune 100 tech giant in operations and strategy, he took an unexpected turn after uncovering golden advice from the company's executives. Realization struck, leading him away from convention. Channeling Benjamin Franklin's essence, he birthed a transformative mastermind, now his life's mission. Presently, Parker superheads Junto Global, empowering countless entrepreneurs to forge profound connections, actualize their inspirations, and craft lives of holistic success. So now tune in for insights that could reshape your path. So I am really excited about hearing about his entrepreneur journey because don't we all want to be on this? All right, so I'm going to bring him on. Hey, Parker.
Hi, Michelle.
How are you doing?
I am excellent. I love your space.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Hopefully, it's inviting and you feel, I always want to have a good space because that way my guests feel comfortable and feel welcome because we are celebrating your journey. But I want to really think back of when you were a child because whenever I read your bio, and I found out that you were a young entrepreneur at 17. You were a board member on for nonprofits, which when I was 17, I had no idea what a nonprofit was. And so whenever I imagine you being even younger than that, I can imagine you with a little briefcase,
I
pretending
love
to be a
briefcases.
See, that's a yeah, because I can see you as a child going, "Okay, what can I do to make the buck?" That kind of thing, and organization and everything else with the briefcase. So kind of describe how you were as a youngster and how it led you into this business world that you found yourself in.
Yeah, it's interesting to think back, and I almost wish I could talk to my younger self.
Yeah.
Um, but I grew up in a really loving household with two amazing parents who taught me values and work ethic. They also, my dad's advice to me growing up was Plan A is to survive and have a good time. Plan B is to
Mm.
survive.
Oh,
And so it was very much a survival mentality. And I don't know if it was just natural intuition or just, seeing on television that there was another way of living. I was very interested in finding it and understanding what more than surviving looks like. And it was very apparent to me that I was going to have to work for that. I had to do a lot of chores and had to work as a young person. And um, I I through that journey found a lot of joy and positive emotion of adding value to other people.
right. Oh my gosh. And that is really that it's so interesting what we kind of go through with as family members, and I agree. I think that it kind of shapes us, and then it kind of not only shapes us, but it's always like, okay, I'm going to do something differently than what my parents went through. But we have to go through that. Now at 17, you worked on as a nonprofit for the board member, and then you had a car wreck at age 20, is what I read in your bio. How did that change the pathway that you were going on?
Yeah, so speaking at leadership conferences, being on the board of nonprofits, starting my own business, it was actually a pretty lonely journey. This was before like Facebook and social media and even like YouTube. And so I felt very alone in that. And I responded by, surrounding myself with people that I had a good time with, a lot of partying and living a fast lifestyle, but not necessarily things that I'm proud of today. And And I gave up on a lot of the opportunities that I had, both in the nonprofits and in my business, and really sought acceptance from my peers. And that car accident shook me out of that and helped me realize that I surrounded myself with a lot of people that were taking advantage of me, and I was on a bad path. And it caused me to walk those people out of my life and start fresh and be very careful and curate the people that I brought into my inner circle moving forward.
Right.
And those people became the foundation for the community that we now have.
It's almost like, God, the universe was saying, wake up, Parker. You've got things to do. You got things to learn. And you need to really, I think I love that statement that you really need to look at the people who are in your life. Because a lot of times, yes, we get a lot of narcissistic personalities or personalities that want to try to control you and try to lead you astray. So good for you to finding that. So now, you have created this mastermind, okay, business approach. And I know that Benjamin Franklin, and I was so curious that you really like how Benjamin Franklin ran his business. So can you kind of explain that? Why did you go towards the model that he had?
Yeah. So I started organizing speaker events when I was in college, where I would bring in an entrepreneur, an executive, an investor to speak to students. And then that created a lot of opportunity for me. That was actually my gateway into the Fortune 100 technology company
Okay.
that I started my career. And then when I left, I continued to organize those speaker events. And over time, I started getting less and less value. I think part of it is there's just so much great content online. And so if there's something that's really relevant to me, I can like I've learned to go find that, and I can hear from the world expert that would cost me, $100,000 to have a conversation with, but I can absorb all those secrets for free online. But the part that um, was more valuable to me was the peer-to-peer interaction at the beginning and the end of that event, where I'm like, hey, I'm living this successful independent lifestyle. I'm really busy, I'm working a lot, I'm working out, I'm dating, and I'm grocery shopping and cleaning, and like I just don't have any extra time.
Right.
What are you doing to get more time, or how are you using your time differently? And it was just authentically relevant to where I was at then and there. And at the same time, just serendipitously, how do you ever say that?
I understand.
Um, serendipitously, um, that I was reading Benjamin Franklin's autobiography. It was actually the first autobiography ever written,
Yeah.
and um, I think it was one of the starts of personal development literature. He was very into personal development and living like a moral life and doing good for other people. And
Right.
he decided to form a mastermind he called a club for mutual improvement in his early 20s. And I was like, what if we just use this model, this name, and we do it today for this group of people that we've curated together? And I never forget the first meeting. We had like four people attend, right? Like we
Right.
had invited 30 people, only four showed up, and it was so impactful. And the next meeting we had five, and then six, and it just started to grow organically. And I just saw so much benefit and value created for myself and for the other people involved, and realized it was something I was willing to suffer for.
Well, let's bring on I was on your Facebook. I have to admit. And I love this picture with you sitting next to a statue of Benjamin Franklin, because you just seem like, hey, I have found myself. It's almost like, if you had lived during the time of Benjamin Franklin, y'all would be best friends. It's
I'd
like
hope so.
it's like, yeah, so it's awesome that you've learned it. I'm going to also bring up a picture that it's so interesting that you're talking about your meeting. Is that you in the middle of the table talking?
It is.
Okay. So you said that you started out with four people. And so look how, I mean, like you said, you had your vision and it just grew and it just grew and it just grew. And I absolutely love this, how you bring all entrepreneurs together in the mastermind. Hi, if you are being inspired by this episode, please share with somebody that will also be inspired. We are here to change the world. All right, let's get back to the conversation. So, what I really want to know, because as you were growing up, you said that you had to look like work for things. It's almost like your belief system that you're really having to work. Now it's kind of moved to suffer. Okay. I've heard that in your vocabulary a couple of times. So, what does suffering mean to you?
Yeah. So, I had to work, and then I actually really enjoyed it. Like, I enjoyed adding value to other people. Um, it, it- you mentioned, and I shared this in my bio, that I had the opportunity to speak with some of the executives at the company that I worked at, and basically understand how they saw the company, how they saw the industry. What And then I started asking them, like, hey, what do you do every
Right.
day?
Right.
Do you like it?
Yeah.
Would you recommend it to
You're
me?
right.
And I was shocked by the percentage of times that people said no. And I was like, that's really interesting. They were like, yeah, I wish I was asking these questions when I was your age. I was like, well, what advice do you give your kids? And they'd be like, that's a really personal question. I'm like, yep. you know,
Right.
and and they were like, I tell them to, like, look for what you're passionate about, and that was like cartooning and music and just these different things that I had never even considered. And then I was in a Junto meeting, and this idea of passion came up, and it was that the other member was like, it's not what we would do if we had $1 million or $1 billion, or like what we do that we're willing to love. What passion is what we're willing to suffer for.
Oh.
And I was like, that's really interesting, because I'm, an entitled, young person
Mhm.
that has some narcissistic tendencies. And, I think there's a strong desire for comfort and removing suffering from life. And so I looked at my life of, like, what is it I'm willing to suffer for? And it was really two things. It was Junto, which is this thing that I was doing every Friday night when I was tired. I didn't have any extra time, but I would still show up and put it together and make it happen. And then it was making good food and good drinks for my friends. So, and people that I loved. And so that led me to go in on Junto. And then I also became the COO of a mixology
Oh,
company.
wow.
Um, and raise some money for them, and eventually just realized, like, Junto was the most authentic thing to me.
Mhm.
So I think that's part of the suffering conversation. And I think in college I studied finance and Eastern studies, and on the Eastern studies piece of it, I think it was Buddha that's like, or it's a yoga principle, one of the other.
Oh, really?
It's just, life is suffering,
Mhm.
right? And the more that we accept that and embrace it, the easier that it's going to be. Versus, I think what happens a lot of times today is there's a escaping and numbing, and hiding from that suffering that I think can negatively impact intuition and our relationship with ourself and our awareness of ourself and the people around
Oh, I
us.
love it. Oh, well, thank you. That was a great explanation. Awesome. Okay, so let's get back to your mastermind business. Um, so what makes what you do differently from another mastermind?
Yeah. So first thing is, I think a lot of things get called masterminds
Mhm.
that aren't actually masterminds.
Oh, I gotcha.
A lot of events these days or conferences get called a mastermind, but it's really people on stage talking to people in the audience.
Mhm.
And really, what a mastermind is a roundtable conversation of peers where there's no hierarchy, and we're all bringing value to each other. In my opinion, we have each other's best interests at mind as well. And we're setting the agenda together. Like, this is like our agenda, and we're going to talk about the things that are most valuable to us. One of the things that I think makes Junto different than a lot of other business masterminds, or entrepreneur masterminds, is that our focus is not just around making more money. It's about becoming better, like better human beings. We talk about philosophy, we talk about science, we talk about marketing trends and business trends, and we also talk about health. We talk about relationships. We talk about, I think personal development is a core piece of success in any area of life, that growth mindset. And so, I think the conversations can be a little bit different in that holistic approach versus if we're just talking about the tactics and strategies of making more money.
Right, right. And I love that you're bringing in all aspects of life because a lot of businesses don't. They don't care about your health, about, your personal development. So that is really awesome that you're bringing that in. Okay, so a question I have for you. Now, this is a little bit different. So, if I came to you and I'm going, Parker, I'm having a hellacious week. I need some type of inspiration. So, what kind of inspiration can you give just to anybody, not only entrepreneurs, just anybody?
I would say that the hellacious weeks and that darkness, that those fires, that trigger, if we are willing to lean into that and really explore that, that the diamonds and the golds are underneath it and really in direct proportion to the hellaciousness that we're dealing with. And so to examine it, figure out the story that we're telling, that we're telling ourselves based on this darkness or this hell, and choose that story wisely and potentially rewrite that story.
Oh, I love it. And I'm telling people all the time, you are the artist of your life story. You have a blank canvas and you are able to create whatever you want to in life. Because a lot of people get hung up. And a lot of people, especially when they start businesses for the first time, they get frustrated. They're going, okay, I put that on my canvas, okay, like a vision board, but it's not happening. That type of thing. So, what do you tell people that really want to move forward, but are not moving forward, if that makes any sense to you?
Hmm. I think entrepreneurs are people that you can't tell what to do a lot of
Right.
times, right? Like you can't, you couldn't even make them stop if you wanted to. Um, what would I tell someone that's not moving forward? This might be not inspirational and a
Oh,
little
it's
too
okay.
direct, but
No.
it's
Yeah.
like we get to choose between being the victim and the hero,
Right.
right? And like I think life starts, the hero's journey really starts when we're tired of being the victim. And so things as an entrepreneur, it doesn't get easier, right? It's like it's almost like after school, like people are like school is so hard, and it's like, well, let me tell you that after school is just harder,
Hmm.
and this is a preparation ground for dealing with the future tests that are going to come up. And the way we do anything is the way we do everything,
Right.
right? The first and last rule. So how are you going to handle this so that maybe not only you're proud, but that your children are going to be proud of you, and what is the impact that you want to have, and is it being the victim or is it being the hero?
Oh, love it. It almost reminds me of the Nike commercial where it says "Just do it." You know what? Move forward, get
Yeah.
those sneakers on, and just get the fire underneath you. Because I absolutely love that. Because I think a lot of people do tend to play the victim when they could just move forward, re strategize or find people like you that can move them forward and say, like you said, be direct with them and say, you got to move forward. Is there anything that we did?
Well,
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
real quick on
Yeah.
that, yeah, is one of my favorite quotes and ideas that I've read is that it's like a weak person allows their emotions or feelings to determine their actions, and a strong person lets their actions determine their feelings.
Can you say that one more time? I love it.
Yeah, it's from Og Mandino,
Okay.
who's an amazing author, um, and he's written a lot of amazing books like The Greatest Secret in the World, The Greatest Salesman in the World, The
Uh-huh.
Greatest Miracle in the
Okay.
World, and it's one of his lines. It's A weak person lets their feelings determine their actions, and a strong person allows their actions to determine their feelings.
And I think that is something that, people need to write down and like recite every day. It's kind of one of those mantras that sounds beautiful.
Well, I think the challenge, Michelle, is like there's a difference between knowing and doing,
Okay.
right?
Right.
And that difference is everything. So we can intellectually know something, but and I think this is where masterminds come in too, is it's not telling someone something they don't know. It's more about activating the knowledge that they already have,
Mm.
and like activating that truth into wisdom, into application.
I love it. And I think because you're not telling them to go like what we talked about earlier. You're not telling them to go down a different pathway that they are not passionate about. You're kind of looking at where they are and being authentic about where they are and to move forward with that.
Well, I think it came up at some point in this conversation, or maybe it was before this like when we were talking earlier around like
Right.
narcissism, like narcissistic people is those people like a narcissistic person doesn't think they're
Right.
narcissistic like
Yeah.
90% of the time, right?
Mhm.
It's a blind spot. And so how do we, you know, eh, how do we see the truth? And like Mark Twain said, it's like it's not what you don't know that's going to hurt you, it's what you know that isn't so, right? And so that's why I think even personal development is not a personal journey. It's not an individual journey. Our personal development involves our community and our success team, and creating a space where we can be vulnerable with each other about what it is we really want, and have people on the other side that have our best interests in mind and can challenge us around what we know that isn't so.
I love it. Absolutely love it. So is there anything that we did not want to talk about that you want to make sure that you get into this episode?
The only thing that comes up for me with that is my favorite quote um, is life is not a problem to be solved, but an adventure to be lived. And I'm a problem solver naturally, and I like to, find problems and solve them. But my life really changed for the better when I stopped approaching life as a problem to be solved and instead embraced it as an adventure or journey to be lived.
Oh, I love it. I love that you said adventure because it is. Each day is an adventure. 'Cause you don't know what's going to happen. That kind of thing. Are you ready for
Well, and we can try to control
Yeah,
that as much as we
right.
want, but I think even trying to do that can limit the joy and the growth,
Mhm.
like it's like the comfort, right? It's like often if we wanted to control it and plan the day, it it creates a comfort that where all the growth comes from in the discomfort.
Right.
And I guess one other thing I'd like to throw out there is like um I see a lot of like people, and I think it's just a societal thing right now, at least in the West, where there's this desire to be right, and there's this like thought that like I'm right and like maybe the other person's wrong. I think this happens a lot in politics, like left versus right, which I think is just such a lame way of seeing things. And one of the most powerful ideas that I heard was around like paradoxes that and I'm at the point now where I think truth is often paradoxical. And what a paradox is it's two conflicting ideas that are somehow both true. And I think as leaders, we need to stand in that paradox and understand both sides and not judge either side, but help people like communicate this paradox and that it exists and how it exists in this situation, or this this complexity in this reality, and bring people together, because I think most people want the same thing, and there's just different ways of going about it, and it's really hard if we're on one side to see things from the other person's point of view. And I think less and less curiosity is being used to really try to understand the other person's point of view when they disagree with the way that we see the world.
Okay, Parker, I'm going to ask you the last question of this interview using the wheel. So let's go ahead and spin it and see what we get.
Believe in aliens, huh? I think the short answer is on different experiences that I've had, and things that I've seen. I remember being in Catalina and just seeing something that I definitely cannot explain. I was actually with my wife too, but I go back and forth on it. It's not something that I spend a lot of time thinking about, just because it's not, directly related to the impact that I want to have and like my circle of influence. Um, but you know, I think that the evidence just keeps on coming out, and I don't know if it's a distraction. Sometimes it feels like a distraction. Like when I go down that rabbit hole, I come out and I'm like, I might know more, but there's nothing I can do with that knowledge. Um, so that's where I'm at with that conversation.
You have it here. Parker just explained what aliens are all about. I love that question that you had to answer, Parker. And I want to thank you for being a part of the show. I know that my audience is absolutely going to love you because you have so many inspirational quotes that I loved hearing. Now, the one that I want to finish up with everybody to remind them about life. All right. So, life is not a problem to solve, but an adventure to be lived. I'm going to repeat that one more time. Life is not a problem to be solved, but an adventure to be lived. I hope that this helps you for this coming week, and I will see you next week. I'll see you soon.